Howdy, y'all. You got the Bulldog on the channel. Figured I'd show you something. I had a go around with somebody, and it pertains to the brand of plug that you use in your vehicles. Personally, I use whatever OE came with. If it's a General Motors, it gets an AC Delco. If it's a Chrysler, it gets a Champion. If it's a Ford, it gets a Motorcraft. Uh, and the reason I personally feel that way is all the times that I have to take out plugs out of vehicles that other people have worked on that didn't work. I don't know how many of them actually do work. I really don't. Uh, because I only find the problems. That's my job. When it has a problem, you come to me and I find your problem and I fix it. So I don't know how many times somebody puts an off brand plug in something and it works, because I don't see those. Why would it come to me? All I see is cars that come in and they're running like crap. It's a Ford Taurus and it is running like crap. I don't see why there's a problem. I just put new plugs in it. And you look at the plugs and they're auto lights. Well, there's, problem number one. That has happened a lot. A whole lot. I don't have near as much problem with it with all the other brands. I don't know why. I posted a deal on a fan page for another YouTuber. Said, I'm going to start some controversy here. And I told my experience. And like I figured, it was across the board. Opinions, hard one way and hard the other. And 2 or 3 times I responded on there and I said, well, I knew that it was going to be all over the place and a lot of it's going to be personal preference. But honestly, I don't understand. Why do I always have trouble with it when other people don't? Or they say they don't? I don't know if they do or not. Here's what brought it up. My son, last week, bought plugs to put in his car. I don't know why. He thought there was something wrong with it. Well, there was. But he bought auto lights. He went into a local store and they said, here's the right ones. And he asked me where the tools were or something. He asked me something last week, and I said, what are you doing? Well, I'm putting plugs in my car. Okay. What plugs did you buy? Autolite. Oh, crap. Why did you do that? And he didn't respond. And I said, it's going to run like crap. It's going to have a random misfire. And he didn't respond. I sent another message. He still hadn't responded. But when I got home, he was at work. Okay. He gets home from work that night, late, and he came walking up and he handed me the Autolite plugs. And he was mad. He says, what are we going to do? I'm like, oh, what happened? I guess you didn't put them in? Oh, I put them in. It ran like crap. It wouldn't run at all. I took them back out. Okay, we get our money back. He says, I tried. They told me they were used since I installed them. I had to go in the next day and straighten it out with the owner. The owner says, I don't understand. I sell a lot of these and I put them in a lot of vehicles. I said, yeah, I know. I take them back out. And he just reached into the drawer and gave me the money. And I walked out. He didn't have to give me the money back. It would have been a lot worse if he hadn't, but, legally, he didn't have to. But honestly, I take a lot of them out. I discussed it with my son, and I asked him, His car was running better when he put the old plugs back in. And I asked him, well, don't just put plugs in, put wires on too. Why? Well, there we go. See that dark spot on the end of the porcelain? That's a carbon track. There's another one. See here. This one has several of them on it. These plugs have been taken back out twice. And that stuff is still on there. See? That's where the spark, instead of jumping across this 80 thousandths gap, they were wore out. They're supposed to be 42. The spark jumps directly from this electrode down to ground. It really shows up around this edge. I don't see it as much going down the ribs of the porcelain. But of course they've been in and out twice. These are all different plugs now. He's got them laying up here on the bench. Oh, there's one. Well, there's one that doesn't have it, or it doesn't have a big one. Whether at that angle you can see the dark spot where it goes across all the ribs. When you tilt it, you can see it. That's carbon tracking. The reason that is important, the reason that we don't like people putting in plugs and then finding a problem, is inside the boot of your spark plug wire, you will have a corresponding mark where that electric goes down the outside of that porcelain. It's going down on the inside of this boot and burning a channel through that boot. Replace them as a pair. I get a little bit perturbed when people question me why. Because it is not 1960 anymore. In 1960, you'd have these things out every 10, 15,000 miles, cleaning the electrode, regapping it, and putting it back in. Your wires were wire. So why would they wear out? These wires are made out of a coated, wound material. It's got I think a graphite core or something like that. It's a conductive material, and it's got winding around it for radio suppression. That's why originally back in the 60s and 70s they started making these kinds of wires for radio suppression, because if you had an old car and you had junk wires on it, when you turned your radio on, you could hear your engine. Ring, ring. You could hear it in the speakers. Well, that was the radio interference the wires were generating. The radio antenna would pick it up. So they had to have different kinds of wires. We're running many thousands of volts where we used to run very low voltage. We're using exotic materials in the wires where we used to use wire. Those things wear out. The way I test, the carbon track is a dead giveaway. It is bad. It's junk. Shot. But what I do is I have what's called a kV probe, kilovolt probe. And right here where it hooks onto the coil pack, I'll hook that kilovolt probe here, and I'll see, hey, this thing's got 6,000 volts or 10,000 volts right here at the coil. And then I'll hook that thing to the other end of this wire right here. and measure the voltage. And I've only got 2,000 volts there. That's what's actually sparking the plug. It's losing thousands of volts along that wire, leaking out, just going through the wire. Resistance, internal resistance in the wire. That's why you replace them. I don't really look at high dollar wires, exotic stuff, unless you're getting into high dollar engines, something high performance. Your passenger car, it needs to spark it and have radio suppression. That's really the only things that you need to worry about. When you get into higher performance and you're running higher voltages, yeah, you need better wires, but you can get wires cheap enough. Just put them on every time you do plugs. You're running these things 100,000 miles at a time. If everything goes all right, sometimes 70 or 80. I don't know how long these plugs have been in there, but they doubled their gap because the tips broke off. That one's a decent gap. And look at how thin the ground strap is. You see the electrode is worn, kind of at an angle. You also see where that ground strap thins down. It's thick up there. You're looking at my eye. Thick up there and thin at the end. That's why your plugs wear out. Get the right plugs for the job. Go ahead and splurge for a set of wires. He come in last night. I had gotten him a set of wires. He put in his plugs because I told him, do not put your plugs in yet. Wait until you're putting the wires on at the same time. Because if you put your new plugs with them old wires, they will spark down the side just like they did before and ruin your new plugs. So wait. And he did. He waited a couple days. I got my new wires in, installed them. He did last night. He says, wow, it runs so much better. It wasn't even missing. It makes a difference. Figured I'd get on here and talk about that. Like, comment, subscribe. Hit your little bell notification. Share it all around. Talk to you later.